Hunter Derby. It's sponsored by Cantor, Colorado, Gold Crest Sport Horses, and Arapahoe Park. And what are we in store for this $500 Thoroughbred Hunter Derby here at the Colorado Horse Park, Crest?
So these Derby classes are 2-round classes. The first round is a classic round, so it's judged the same as a regular hunter round, judged on way of going, style over the jumps, keeping an even pace, things like that. The second round is a handy round, so it will be judged with emphasis on brilliance of pace. So a more forward canter. They like to see some turns in the hunter or in the handy round, a little bit more expedient route from point A to point B, and also in these classes there are 2 jumps out here that are high options. If the riders choose to jump the high options, then they get an extra point per jump. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start out with the classic round in any minute now, I think.
And these are all for thoroughbreds, and when you think of thoroughbreds, you normally think of race horses. That's how the breed was developed. All thoroughbreds can trace their origin back to the same 3 sires, the Byerly Turk, the Godolphin Barb, and the Darley Arabian, but the thoroughbreds can be used for so many different uses, and so we're going to see them here in this Hunter Derby round. And the field that we have, the 3 horses and riders, we have Faithful Endeavor, ridden by Sarah Thompson, Prime Time, ridden by Meredith Knudsen, and Paradise Bay, ridden by Stephanie Peterson. And before we see them, are you familiar with any of these horses, familiar with any of these riders?
I'm very familiar with Paradise Bay. Stephanie Peterson is a local professional. She owns and trains that horse, and she'll be riding him. So it looks like we have our first one on course.
And so our first entry is number 388. It's Faithful Endeavor, ridden by Sarah Thompson. The horse is owned by Bree Graff and is based in Elizabeth, Colorado. And Faithful Endeavor, when he was racing, was known as Sweet Emochi. He's a 10-year-old, and he's a Colorado bred who raced locally at Arapahoe Park, had 2 starts in 2009 as a 3-year-old, even ran in Stakes Company, ran in 7th in the Colorado Thoroughbred Breeders Association Breeders' Oaks. So it's very different to see this horse who, being the announcer at Arapahoe Park, I'm used to seeing him race. What should I be looking for here in the hunter ring that would show whether Sweet Emochi, now known as Faithful Endeavor, is handling this new discipline well?
So again, as I said before, we're looking for an even pace. We're looking at the style of the horse over the jumps. You want to see their front end be pretty even, a little bit rounded through the back. This horse looks like he might be a little bit on the green side. He's stepped off of his lead a few times here and there, but certainly a nice athletic horse, and he's going at it like those thoroughbreds do. You're going to love the heart of a thoroughbred. He looks happy to be here. So
absolutely, very eager to take the jumps. And these jumps, they're all set at 2.6, and then the high option is 2.9.
Yeah, and she's done both of the high options, so she'll get an extra point for each of those. And we'll see what the judge thinks about that. The open numerical score, obviously from 0 to 100. So those are it's a wide range.
So that was the first round for Faithful Endeavor, and this is the first season that Faithful Endeavor and Sarah Thompson have shown together, and they get a nice round of applause from the crowd.
She got a score there of 78 in her first round with 2 points for those 2 high options, so that's a nice score, an 80. That's a good, solid first round score to come back with.
And now we see entering the arena Prime Time. And Prime Time is ridden and owned by Meredith Knudsen of Highlands Ranch.
Breeds are typically warm bloods. It used to really be all thoroughbreds, and then as the warm bloods got introduced over here, people found them a little bit easier to work with. You know, they don't have as much blood, as it were, as these thoroughbreds, and so the thoroughbreds have fallen a little out of favor, but I think they're making a nice comeback as people decide that maybe it was a little more fun to have a horse with a little more forward attitude and a little bit better thinker, typically.
She did take 1 high option. That means it was a total of 41.
So like you said, with the...
So that score reflected the refusal at the first jump, which is too bad because once she got going, she had a nice little round.
So a 41 for Prime Time, the 40 plus the 1 high option, and then for Faithful Endeavor, the first horse that we saw, it was a 78 plus the 2 high options for 80, and that leads us into our third entry in this Thoroughbred Hunter Derby field, and that's Paradise Bay, who's ridden and owned by Stephanie Peterson of Fort Collins. And Paradise Bay was a horse who was purchased as a yearling with high hopes for racing for $360,000, went by the race name of Bayamo, and with really great breeding, sired by Bernardini out of Banshee Winds. And he's a half brother actually to the 1998 Eclipse Award champion 3-year-old in Banshee Breeze. So a horse who was bred really to be a racing star, but after only 3 starts has now transitioned into doing other things, and now here with Stephanie Peterson. And what are your impressions of the horse so far?
This is a very nice horse. He's been competing for a couple of years at the hunter shows, and he's really kind of just starting to come into his own as a hunter. He's got a really nice way of going, as you can see, just really pretty fluid across the ground, nice even pace. He jumps well. Clearly he's well overqualified for this height of jump. You know, he's just kind of cantering over him, which is fine. But this is a nice, scopy, big strided horse, and pretty. I like everything about this horse, really.
I was talking to Stephanie, and she said that instead of racing, this horse really was built for being a sport horse, because he would be making lead changes during races, and it does seem like he's adapted to this type of discipline pretty quickly, and,
yeah.
And really showing it here, a real smooth horse.
Yeah, that was a really nice round. She'll get a nice score for that.
A laid back horse, Stephanie said, says that her horse likes naps and likes to snuggle, and after a good round he'll probably get some carrots, although she says that he doesn't like apples very much.
82. She did take 1 high option on the fencing, leaves her with a total of 83.
So an 82 for Paradise Bay plus 1 high option gives her 83, and we had Faithful Endeavor with 80 and Prime Time with 41. And so how will the second round look different than the first round?
So typically they'll come back in reverse order. So our horse with the 41 score will come back first. The handy round, like I said, is judged more on the brilliance of the canter. They're going to want to see some turns here in between the jumps, not so much cantering and loping in a straight line. The course is usually set so that there are some options where you could turn inside of a jump or go around a jump to get from one to the next. So she'll want to be looking for all of that. And the handy round is a good place to really improve your standing. A lot of times you can really pull yourself up a lot of places if you come out. You have a little trouble in the first round. If you come out and really knock it out in the handy, you can really improve your placing a lot. And people frequently do.
And so right now with Paradise Bay at an 83 and Faithful Endeavor with an 80, is that a pretty difficult margin to overcome? Or?
Well, I mean, she would obviously have to count on one of those 2 horses making a pretty significant mistake in the handy to cover that gap, because the 2 rounds will be combined, the scores. So
right now I was talking about between first and second.
Between the 2 of them. Well, that's a close race. So they're going to have to. They're going to both have to kind of come out here and bring their A game and see where we get to.
All these horses, they're part of the Jockey Club for running racing has really embraced this idea of promoting the work of thoroughbreds after they finish their career, and they're all part of the Jockey Club's Thoroughbred Incentive Program. And you were talking about the resurgence of the thoroughbred breed as sport horses, and that's thanks to some of the organizations that are involved in sponsoring this class. You've Cantor, Colorado. They find a lot of new homes for retired race horses, and Arapahoe Park, the track where I announce, has really made an effort to try and promote the thoroughbreds and what they do after their racing careers, because a racehorse will retire relatively young. American Pharaoh, the Triple Crown winner last year, retired at 3 years old, but even if a horse races until a relatively old racing age, we've seen 10-year-old winners, 12-year-old winners, but that's still relatively young in the life of a horse and what they can do.
Yeah, that's true. And for us in the hunter-jumper industry, you know, we really think of them as starting their career for us around 4 years old, 5 years old. So a lot of these horses that have been retired from racing can come right here and start out and be really successful for a lot of years. And it's not uncommon at all to see horses well into their teens still jumping and competing and winning and doing well. So it's good that these thoroughbreds have started to kind of make a comeback, and I'm glad for all the support from all the various organizations and the jockey club trying to really promote this, because I think it's a really good breed of horse, and I would love to see more people start to come back and really think they would like a thoroughbred instead of maybe just a warm blood.
What are the biggest differences between the two breeds, the thoroughbreds and the warm bloods?
Well, I mean, warm bloods basically have been thoroughbreds that were crossed with draft horses back a long way. Obviously, they're not draft horses now, but they're just a much colder blooded horse, thus being called a warm blood instead of a hot blood. And so a lot of people find them easier to ride. They're a little more tolerant of mistakes. You know, you can kick on a warm blood, you can pull on a warm blood, and a lot of these thoroughbreds are a little more sensitive than that, and so people find them a little bit difficult sometimes, but I think they're well worth the effort. So here's our first one back.
And that's Prime Time and Meredith Knutson, and more of a greener horse, but that's understandable given that the horse really only finished racing a little over a year ago and came right off the track from Nebraska and was originally trained by Tara Heeb after finishing racing, and Tara has now sold the horse to Meredith Knutson.
Yeah, this horse is relatively new to jumping, obviously. So, and this is a hard test for these horses to come right in and go try to trot that little jump. This is tough, so we'll see if he gets this figured out this time. That's too bad.
Thank you, Ryder.
So that was her third refusal, so she's excused there, so she won't get a score for this round.
But this is a horse that I think we could be seeing down the road with a little bit more training and a little bit more experience. Yeah. And this experience, just to be in this environment,
yeah,
it'll be something that the horse and the rider can take with them down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really the first horse show that's been going on this year. There were a few others scheduled that got snowed out, so a lot of these horses haven't been anywhere for 4 or 5 months at this point too. So.
Well, it was very close after the first round between Paradise Bay and Faithful Endeavor. Faithful Endeavor would have 3 points to make up in this handy round. And here is Faithful Endeavor and Sarah Thompson, the lone Colorado bred in the field.
388 comes back in the ring for the handy round in the Thoroughbred Hunter Derby.
This is their first season showing together, and what Sarah said is after developing an instant and faithful rapport, they took their first steps into the 3-foot ring together just last month, and they hope to grow together as a team throughout the year. So a new pairing between Faithful Endeavor, who used to go by the racing name of Sweet Emochi, and rider Sarah Thompson.
Yeah, she's doing a nice job out here. This is a game little horse. He's ready for anything, so he's enjoying doing a little bit of turning, and he's really looking for the jumps and trying to help her out here, and she's done a good job so far.
Much tighter turns than the horse would have had to do when racing, because racetrack at Arapahoe is a 1-mile oval, and it is pretty amazing to see the tight turns after jumps that these horses can make. And a round of applause. What was your impressions of this round here?
She did a really nice job, and like I said, he really stepped up to the plate, and he looked like he was enjoying himself, looking around for those jumps and making the turns, so she ought to get a nice score for that. It's a nice horse.
So we'll wait the scoring, which is being compiled by Judge Meg Schulman and being announced by Shonda Zapata.
For Faithful Endeavor, she did have 2, both high options on the fence.
So a 77 plus 2 high options gives 79. So a 159 total going with the 80 first round score. And now here's our leader after the first round, and that's Paradise Bay and Stephanie Peterson. And you were really raving about this horse in the first round.
Yeah, this is a nice quality horse, like I said, and he's really starting to come into his own here. He's been showing for a few years, and just like everything else, as he's practiced, he gets even better and better. So I think you'll see a lot of this horse in the future. He can jump as big a jump as you can set, I think. And
Stephanie Peterson from Fort Collins.
He's certainly got the right attitude.
Enters the ring with a first-round score.
When this horse was racing, he was owned by the ruling family of Dubai, the Maktoum family. The Darley stable that they have in Kentucky is one of the top breeding grounds for race horses. And this horse was originally purchased for $360,000 as a yearling. What stands out the most about this round? Is it the tight turns? Is it the jumping? Is it the rhythm?
You know, I think she just really did a good job with all of that. She did a nice job. I don't know if you noticed that she just walked in the gate and trotted right to the first jump. That's something you like to see in the handy round, just getting right down to business. He was so attentive and really paying attention to her cues. She made nice turns. Her canter was a little brighter than in the first round, but still a really nice even pace. Jumped all the jumps beautifully.
Paradise Bay receives a second round score of 84. She did choose one high option.
So improved second round score, an 84, one high option. It's 85, and so 168 total.
Yeah, and 85 is really quite a good score by any standards. So that was nice that they rewarded her for coming in and getting right down to business, like I said, and doing all those turns, and kept her horse on a nice canter pace. So it was everything you really want to see in the handy hunter.
Paradise Bay and Stephanie Peterson, formerly raced as Bayamo, winning with a 168 total. Faithful Endeavor and Sarah Thompson. Faithful Endeavor used to go by the racing name of Sweet Emochi, and they finished in second with a 159 total score. And then Prime Time, known in racing as Primal Touch, and Meredith Knutson had the first round score of 41.
Third place.
And this Thoroughbred Hunter Derby was sponsored by Cantor, Colorado, an organization that finds new homes for retired racehorses. Gold Crest Sport Horses that puts on the Gold Crest Classic at the Colorado Horse Park, also put on the Gold Crest Summerfest in the summer times, and Arapahoe Park, the racetrack in Colorado that will start racing in May, with the season going from May 20th to August 14th. And now in the center of the arena, Gold Crest Jenny Alsberg is handing out the ribbons, and the yellow ribbon for third place will go to Prime Time, ridden by Meredith Knutson. And here's our second place finisher to receive the red ribbon, Faithful Endeavor and Sarah Thompson. And then we'll have the winner coming in, Paradise Bay and Stephanie Peterson. What's the hunter season look like? Because you said this is one of our first shows of the year, so what are some of the shows to be looking forward to down the road?
There are quite a few shows coming up, I think. I know that they do a full schedule of these CHGA horse shows, which are local rated horse shows. I think there's one just about every weekend going forward now. Then they have a circuit here at the Colorado Horse Park a couple weeks in May, all summer, June and July. They have horse shows here. There are 3 horse shows up in Estes Park in July and August, and then back here again in September. So there's something to do just about every week, like I said, starting now.
So it's really full steam ahead from this point forward.
This is the beginning. So.
And this horse now receiving the blue ribbon and the championship plate. Looks like he's getting off on the right foot for this year's season.
He's admiring himself and his plate as well. He should. He's very handsome.
And this is Paradise Bay, the 8-year-old dark bay, who is now owned and trained by Stephanie Peterson.
actually had owned another horse that she traded with one of her clients because the horse she owned was a jumper, and her client owned this horse and wanted a jumper, so Stephanie traded, so now she's the owner of this guy, which I think was a good trade. Who wouldn't want to own this horse?
Beautiful horse, and is the winner of the $500 Thoroughbred Hunter Derby. Now, if you have a horse who was a jumper and then transitions to becoming a hunter, is that a big transition for a horse like this?
It really depends on the horse. You know, it's a little bit like going from racing to this. If this is more what they wanted to do in the first place, then you'll know that right away. I mean, some horses are obviously always going to want to be a little more forward than you want them to be, maybe for a hunter, a little too much energy, things like that. But a lot of horses will just make the transition and be just fine.
So that's our $500 Thoroughbred Hunter Derby, sponsored by Cantor, Colorado, Gold Crest Sport Horses, and Arapahoe Park. And for someone like myself who spends more time watching the racing and really is now getting very interested in seeing how these horses do after they've finished their racing careers and go on to something new, what are some of the takeaways for someone who may be a little bit of a novice like me that I saw in here today that can make me look forward to more hunter shows?
Well, I think the hunters are a really important part of our sport. You know, I think people are a lot generally more familiar with jumpers. The hunters are, it's a little bit like the difference between speed skating and figure skating. You know, this is kind of more the figure skating part of our sport. I think there's a lot to like about watching a horse canter around and be judged on its way of going and how well it jumps and how well it can maintain a canter and how much it can use its body correctly. I really enjoy that part of this. As I said, the jumpers are getting a lot more popular typically than the hunters these days, but these derby classes have kind of made a resurgence of the hunters too, so I think these are a nice addition for us as hunter aficionados to get to have some of these derby classes that showcase these horses a little bit.
It really brings out the beauty of the horse and the beauty of the thoroughbred breed, especially for this class.
Yeah. And it's nice to see that two-round format because they are judged a little bit differently, and you can see that which horse is going to be sort of the most versatile, which one's going to come out here and really be able to kind of make the transition to doing the tighter turns, gallop around, do that kind of thing. So it's nice.
Well, thank you, Chris, for all your expertise. And it was the former racehorse known as Bayamo, now known as Paradise Bay, and Stephanie Peterson, who won the Thoroughbred Hunter Derby. And this Gold Crest Classic will continue tomorrow with a full day on Sunday, and look for more shows from Gold Crest Sport Horses coming up later on this year at the Colorado Horse Park with the Gold Crest Summerfest. Thank you, Chris, and thank you everybody for following the Thoroughbred Hunter Derby.